Barakata Yahweh, Barakata Yahushai, Bayishim, Barakah Kodash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bayishim, Yahushai. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who ruled and teach well. And peace and salutations to Ya'akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the Brother Raya with another video, and I'm going to start it off with Revelation chapter 9, verse 12. One woe or destruction is past, referring to World War I, and behold, there come two woes more hereafter, World War II, which is past, and this upcoming World War III, which will be nuclear. And while things have seemed to simmer down in the news in regards to World War III, with talks of the coronavirus and the second wave, civil unrest building up, racial tensions building up, these protests going on, the coming food shortages, talks of economic collapse, etc., etc., best believe that this third woe is coming quickly, as it further says in Revelation chapter 11, verse 14. These heathen nations are still getting gathered down into the Middle East and fighting each other, and eventually something major is going to happen that's going to set off the fireworks. And I'll be reading from an article on shtfplan.com titled World War III Incoming. Syrian army says Israeli jets have struck army bases in central Syria to further document these tensions building up to this inevitable World War III. Things are happening quickly, folks. The Syrian army has said that Israeli jets have caused massive explosions when they struck army bases in Central Asia. The information on this attack is still limited. A lot of the footage is unverified, and this could very well be a false flag attack. It's so difficult to say. With everything that's going on, do not let your guard down and resort to fear and panic. Instead, be aware of what's happening and keep your eyes open at all times. Things will get very crazy very soon. One woe is past, and behold, there come two woes more hereafter. And in the Bible, this third woe is also known as the battle in the valley of Jehoshaphat, or the War of Armageddon. I'm going to skip down to this part right here. Israel has repeatedly launched air and missile strikes against what it says are Iranian targets in Syria, but Tel Aviv is not in the habit of acknowledging the attacks. The government in Damascus has accused Israeli jets of using civilian aircraft as human shields in order to penetrate Syrian air defenses. And at this point, the Syrian civil war is a proxy war that the state of Israel and the United States are using to indirectly attack Iran. And what the state of Israel and the U.S. ultimately want is for Iran to be weakened and balkanized so they can't stand up to the state of Israel, which wants to be the main hegemon or power in the Middle East. Just look up the Oded Yinon plan from the 1980s. The only thing that's likely is that this is not organic and is somehow all a part of an overall plan to create a permanent human slave population of Earth. Regional intelligence sources say that Israel's strikes on Syria are part of a shadow war approved by Washington and part of an anti-Iran policy that has undermined in the last 2 years Iran's extensive military power without triggering a major increase in hostilities. But there will be a major increase in hostilities, and it's going to be those Amalekite Edomites who call themselves Israelis and Jewish, who are imposters in the land of Israel, that are going to trigger a war with Iran and drag in not only the U.S. but other major nations down into the Middle East for this third woe. This is Jeremiah chapter 49, verse 20. Therefore, hear the counsel of Yahweh that he hath taken against Edom, you Edomites, or you so-called white people, which you so-called white Americans are, and those Amalekites over in the land of Israel are, and his purposes that he hath purposed against the inhabitants of Teman. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Those Amalekite Edomites in the land of Israel, creating some kind of false flag event to blame Iran, or creating a situation to make Iran retaliate against them so they can justify going to war against Iran. Surely he shall make their habitations desolate with them. And once these Israelis trigger a war with Iran, again, it's going to drag in the U.S. on their side and other nations like Russia and China in on the side of Iran to kick off this battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat. And the reason all these different tensions are being built up to bring about this third woe is because it's judgment from Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai on you heathen nations for afflicting the true children of Israel, the apple of his eye, who are the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, not just in the past, but all the way up until today. And the main oppressors of the children of Israel are you Edomites. Just go to Psalms chapter 83 to see the table of nations of the heathen nations that have confederated themselves against Israel, and at the top of the list are you Edomites. This is Isaiah chapter 34, verse 1 through 3. Come near, ye nations, ye heathen nations, you Israelis, you Saudi Arabians, you Iranians, you Russians, you Chinese, the Turks, these European NATO nations, etc., to hear and hearken, ye people. Let the earth hear, and all that is therein, the world and all things that come forth of it. For the indignation of Yahweh is upon all nations, and his fury upon all their armies. He hath utterly destroyed them. He hath delivered them to the slaughter in the valley of Jehoshaphat, that war of Armageddon. Their slain also shall be cast out, and their stink shall come up out of their carcasses, and the mountains shall be melted with their blood. Once this third woe kicks off and these heathen nations go at each other, there's going to be mass death and destruction. And while you're having these skirmishes right now in the Middle East, these fireworks won't really start until the mark of the beast, which is the RFID/NFC microchip implant, is mandatorily implemented. Then you're going to have the hour of temptation, and shortly thereafter, this third woe. And I'm going to close it out in Joel chapter 3, start at verse 1, and jump around a bit to further elaborate on how this is judgment from Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai on you heathen nations for afflicting the children of Israel. For behold, in those days and in that time, which we're living in right now, the last seconds of the last days, the last seconds of the rulership of the heathens, chiefly you Edomites, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah, the southern kingdom, or the so-called Negroes, and Jerusalem, the northern kingdom, or the so-called Latinos and Native Americans, the elect from all 12 tribes waking up and coming back to their power, Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai. I will also gather all nations, again you heathen nations, you Edomites, or so-called white people, you Moabites, or so-called Chinese people, you Ishmaelites, or so-called Arabs, you Elamites, or so-called Iranians and Indians and Pakistanis, etc., and I will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat. And that word Jehoshaphat means Yahweh Shaphat, or Yahweh's judgment, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel. And that word plead doesn't mean that the Most High is coming with a bouquet of roses to ask you heathens to let his people go. It means that he's judging you heathens for the wickedness that you've committed upon his people, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. And you Edomites, Ishmaelites, and Hamites, or so-called Africans, all had a hand in gathering up the children of Israel and spreading them to these different countries all across the planet through the transatlantic slave trade. The southern kingdom, or the so-called Negroes, were brought from the west coasts of Africa to the Americas, Europe, and other countries, while a lot of so-called Latinos and Native Americans of the northern kingdom were brought to Europe and other countries as well. And you Amalekite Edomites, calling yourselves Jewish and Israelis, that least of the flock that's going to draw all these other nations out to World War III, had a big hand in the slave trade. A lot of those slave ships were owned by you, and we can clearly see that the land of Israel has been parted between these heathens, between those Amalekite Edomite Israelis and those Ishmaelite Arab Palestinians. Verse 3, and they have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for an harlot, and sold a girl for wine, that they might drink. And what does that sound like? Slavery. And there are plenty of historical accounts of you Edomites and Ishmaelites selling boys and girls for muskets, wine, and other little trinkets. And now I'm going to jump down to verse 9. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, which is what the men of the Lord are doing, chiefly through GMS or Great Millstone, by going out there on the highways and byways preaching this word, as well as putting up video epistles like this. Prepare war, that third woe, World War III, nuclear war, the battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, War of Armageddon, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near. These heathen militaries, let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. And we can clearly see that all these heathen nations are gearing up for war. I did a video last week on how these major powers like the US, Russia, and China are building back up their nuclear stockpiles, leaving nuclear weapons peace treaties, and coming up with new policies to make it easier to wage nuclear war. Verse 11, assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Yahweh. And those mighty ones are the death angels of the Most High, which are holding back this destruction, waiting to get the go-ahead from the Most High to release it. And that's going to happen again when the mark of the beast, which is the microchip implant, is mandatorily implemented. Let the heathen be wakened and come up to the Valley of Jehoshaphat, Yahweh's Shaphat, or Yahweh's judgment, for there will I sit to judge the heathen round about for touching the apple of his eye, the true children of Israel, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, chiefly by you Edomites, the so-called white people. Put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come get you down, for the press is full. The fats overflow, for their wickedness is great. Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of Yahweh is near in the valley of decision. And as it says back in Isaiah 34, verse 3, their slain also shall be cast out, and their stink shall come up out of their carcasses, and the mountains shall be melted with their blood. Mass death, destruction, and misery coming to you heathen nations gathered down into the Valley of Jehoshaphat for this third woe. So with this video, I hope you sincere Akim are edified. Just keep strong and keep pushing this word. We're almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathens, chiefly Esau, Edom. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharala, and until next time, Shalom.